Hello, beautiful being, and welcome back to the Kajeology Podcast. I am so excited to have a very special guest with me today, Miss Janis. Janis was one of my clients back in 2022 into 2023 a little bit. And what I absolutely loved about working with Janis was her openness and her receptivity and how excited she was to pivot in her life. She was going from one industry to another. And now she's a pivot coach. And Janice, before you introduce yourself, I just want to share with everyone that you, for me, were such a powerful, beautiful, well-timed manifestation. I was living in my van. I had no idea where I was going and what I was doing. I was just kind of living in surrender and letting things flow to me, and you showed up out of literally nowhere. I don't remember where you came from, how you found me, but you did at the most perfect time. And I remember coaching you as I was traveling down the one, living in my van, basically coming to where you are, right? You're in Southern California. And yeah, it was just such a magical time. And so I'm so grateful to have you on the podcast. Welcome. And could you please introduce yourself and let us know who you are, what you're up to, and anything else that feels present to share right now?
Thank you. Thank you so much. That's so beautiful to hear. And you were a beautiful manifestation for me too. You came at just the right time. I stumbled across your beautiful Instagram page and I just was like, I need to be in this person's essence, in this person's vibe. It was just everything that I was dreaming of. Um, Initiating in my life. So I am a pivot coach. I work with high achieving women, non-binary folks on their pivots, their rising out of toxic relationships and careers, sometimes hand in hand. A lot of my clients are in the midst of divorce. And yeah, that's something else that I was going through when we met in 2022. Yeah, we decided to get a divorce, and it was just such a big shift and change in my life. So now I work mainly with leaders, entrepreneurs, high achievers on their pivots and do that in a, one-on-one container, prioritizing the one-on-one container right now because it's such a personal and deep and private journey. And then there's also a community that's going to be coming up in the next year or so.
Amazing. Yay.
Yeah.
So when we started working together, you weren't just getting a divorce, you were also moving across the country. Like this was a big deal. Can you kind of dive into how it got to that point and also why such a big gap in moving?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So I'll take it back to 2018. I had my first and only child in 2018. I was living in New York City. I had been in the film industry for 20 years, and I saw people having kids. I was like, everyone's doing it, so why not? Like, people just pop out a baby and put them in daycare and rise in their careers, and life just keeps getting better and better. So I had a big reality sandwich coming to me. I had been so steeped in the film industry, in rising up the ladder as an editor and producer in the film industry. I did not have any conversations with people about like, what's it like to have a baby? What's it like to have a 3 month old? What's it like to do any of this? I took like a childbirth class. I feel like a lot of our culture pushes people to prepare for childbirth, which is one day of your life, or maybe three or four. But what about all of life after that? So it was a really, really brutal awakening that it wasn't just going to be my motherly instinct, my like feminine wiles that would help me raise a child, that there were things to learn from ancestors, predecessors, other women who had gone through it. I had beautiful friends, and like one of my friends is a midwife, and I just had a lot of support around me to a degree, but also just had a huge vacuum of not knowing what I didn't know about having a child, about the trauma that would rise up in me after having a child. It was like having a child made my own inner child wake up and be like, oh, you're taking care of a baby? How about we take care of me now too? And it was this huge initiation of a journey because I was just trying to figure out how to like make my baby stop crying and how to feed my baby. And it was so much learning. And I was just in over my head to say the least. So I like had my beautiful crying baby on my chest. I had this like book in my hand called like How to Breastfeed. It's this like yellow book. And it was like, okay, so your baby can feel your nervous system inside of you. And when you're calm, your baby's calm. And I was like, are you kidding me? I have to calm down in order for my baby to calm down. I had been a high stress, high functioning career oriented person for my entire life. I had my first job when I was 13. My mother is an entrepreneur, and I was like not raised to do any housework, any child rearing. Babysitting was not my jam. So it was just a lot. And it was like a beautiful realization because that moment that I will never forget with my baby on my chest and that book in my hand, it was like, okay, you are going to have to do the work. You are going to have to be okay if you want your child to be okay. And if I want my child to know me, I'm going to have to be myself. If I want my child to feel good, I'm going to have to feel good. And I never prioritized feeling good or
Mm.
carving out space for myself. This was all new language for me in 2018. I had done a lot of therapy, and it was sort of like CBT, like forget the past, start where you are now, and like let's just fix your thinking errors. Let's just, smooth over what's going wrong and move forward. Lots of therapy to move forward. And so I was felt really grounded and like good in many ways, but the deeper childhood traumas and ways that my life impacted me really, really woke up when I had a kid, and also woke up in my partner. And our both of our childhood traumas really came together in a way that was like, you're going to learn your biggest life lesson, and you're going to go through the most challenging period of your life right now while you're learning to take care of a child. Um, and both of us wanted nothing more than for our child to have a more peaceful, more wholesome life than we had had, just as our parents wished that for us. And yeah, that's a bit of the story about the beginnings of that healing journey that ultimately led us to moving out of New York City into my parents' backyard during the pandemic in 2020. And that kind of was like a move into nature, which was very healing and wonderful, and also like a move back into my childhood surroundings, which just made the learning opportunities, to say the least, even more present. And it was like, okay, you're going to sit in the discomfort, and you're going to like have the support of your parents as grandparents to your child. But there was a lot of things that came up for me, like living in my literal childhood home, with my own partner now, and like witnessing my own marriage in the space where I witnessed my parents' marriage. It was a long 2 years of really understanding the roots of trauma and codependency and how they impacted my life. And I became very determined to sort through that. I don't want to say fix it or change it, even. It's like it needed to be tended to and brought to light. So in 2022, we moved to San Diego. I had never seen San Diego. I thought it would be a great place to give our marriage the chance to have its own space, its own fresh start, its own new surroundings, and San Diego is known for so much healing joy and just any modality you could possibly think of. There are people practicing that here. And so it was close enough to LA to um, make me feel like I could dip into the film industry when I need to. And in California in general, I have a lot of friends here and a lot of friends I consider family. So it was very challenging to move so far away from my parents and the East Coast in New York City, where I have so much family and connection and roots. But yeah, I was excited about that fresh start. And I talked to people on the phone, what's San Diego like? And somebody just said easy about 5 times in the conversation. And I was like, okay, I'm there. My whole mission was like, how can I make life as easy as possible? And that was one of the beautiful things about starting to work with you was that I finally understood that like easy is different than ease. And that I was going to have to do some really, really hard things in order to gain ease in my life. So yeah, that's a bit of the why and the how of my big pivots of the last
Mm.
6 years. But to say the least, all of that inspired me to become a life coach in 2021. I was like, okay, I need to steep myself in mental health understanding and mind, body, spirit understanding. So I'm going to have to monetize this because I need to do it full time.
Yeah, absolutely. And here you are as a pivot coach, doing it,
Yeah,
doing
exactly.
it. Yeah. And then one of the things that you mentioned as far as like why you hung on for so long and so hard within your marriage is because you thought that you needed to break cycles by keeping your nuclear family intact, and that you couldn't afford to leave, and you were afraid of the damage that you might be doing to your child and to your ex. And I know there are a lot of people out there who want to leave the current situation they're in. They have those exact same thoughts. How did you navigate through those?
Yeah, exactly. I really clung for many reasons and for many years beyond um, which the relationship was healthy. And I just want to also start this conversation with like saying I have the most compassion for myself and for my ex, and that I have been really navigating how to share these stories in ways that I can share them with my child in the future and um, protect the people involved despite how much harm was done. And I've really been meditating on the word like engagement because it's such a marital word. And it's also like we engage in these relationships. And we have to look at whether they are serving us or not, whether these relationships are actually serving us and serving our vision for our lives. And in our culture, there's such emphasis placed on like doing everything you possibly can to stay together. And like, have you worked hard enough on the relationship? And how do you decide when that turning point is that you have done enough? And there's never going to be a direct answer. I mean, some people will have that, but that requires that listening. It doesn't require like having that thought. It requires listening to your body and like moving out of what is on fire. So there was the sense that I wanted to break cycles of generational trauma. That is my mission in life. And my father left when I was 2 years old, almost three. And I got really great grades. And I went to a great school. And I climbed the ladder in the film industry, despite what everybody said about me not being able to handle it all. Um, I proved myself for the rest of my life until until a few years ago when I understood the exact impact that my father's departure had. I really thought like, wow, I my dad left and I didn't have any daddy issues. Like I really had that thought. And then I understood in the midst of my relationship that like my abandonment wound shows up as being constantly prepared for the end. Like any sign, I had never been broken up with. And I thought that was because I'm so amazing, which is true, but not that is like I just when there's like a little sign, there's a little crack, I'm like, I'm out, I'm good. I've already had my bags packed all this time. And that meant that like I had that disconnect that wasn't fully engaged in my relationships per se, or I understand like where I don't know, just the chicken and egg of it all, you know?
Hmm.
So yeah, then there's the like not being able to afford to leave, coming from a two-family household, and especially when a child comes into the picture and you're paying for that child and you're paying for all of the things that life requires, and you're doing it as two people. To imagine going down to one person from that is some mental gymnastic that can be really challenging. And it showed up for me in that like I we had the conversations about ending the relationship, and then that was incredibly hard. And I was like, whew, got through the hardest part. And then it was like, okay, let's just live together until the end of this lease. And living together was obviously incredibly challenging. And I had a therapist who was like, are you putting your financial health over your like physical, spiritual, mental health? And she really helped me see the light that I needed to shift something. I needed to shift into like protecting my peace first, and whatever that meant financially needed to happen and would be for the ultimate good of all involved, as you always told me.
Mm.
Um, yeah, I'd been raised never to go into debt, and I had to like break some of those beliefs down and take some risks that like ultimately brought me joy. And it can be so overwhelming to be at the end of a relationship because you want to like just get to the you want to get from the A, which is hell, to the B, which is like beautiful space with your new family environment, your and what's in between there is like a giant mess. And that's why I specifically work with the high achievers and perfectionists, is because we have a harder time, like quote unquote, making a mess of life. And it's like embracing that mess, being like, I'm excited to have pizza on the floor of an empty condo with my child. And like that can be truly a beautiful bonding experience with my child, and not like a holy shit, we're in an empty condo eating pizza on the floor.
Hmm.
Like flipping those images, I have chills all over my body right now because it took so much bravery to do that. And I will always be proud of having pizza with my child on the floor of an empty condo where we could make a mess without anyone um, saying anything,
Yeah.
society, partners, family. None of it mattered. What mattered was like me being her mother, keeping her safe, keeping me safe. And what I did to make that happen was so challenging and so beautiful. And I want that for everyone. There's nothing I want more than for people to gain the courage to make a mess of their lives temporarily for the like beautiful garden that's possible after tilling all that soil.
Hell yeah.
Um, yeah. And so that kind of also ties in with like, yeah, I was really afraid to hurt my child and hurt my ex. And there were a lot of voices coming at me like, are you going to ruin your child's life? Are you going to abandon your partner? Like, are you giving up on someone? It's like, have you done enough work on the relationship? Couldn't you try this or that? And it's so, I think that what really helps in that situation is like getting out of the black and white thinking. And there's been so much, that's what I love working with people on, like finding the shades of gray in the thought process, because it's like, okay, you can leave the relationship, you can come back, you can pendulate between different formats. And one of the most inspiring things that I read that helped me was from the book Untamed by Glennon Doyle, which was just like a family needs to be whatever shape it needs to be for the people in the family to be at peace and in harmony. And so, if that means conjoined apartments, if that means, living together half the time, yeah, I think I actually heard a beautiful story of yours on one of your episodes about your parents living sort of week by week. I'll let you
Mhm.
share it if you, but just that, yeah, just that our children can become such beautiful lights like you are out of unconventional situations that allow us to be happy. How about the whole like sleeping in the same bed thing? I have clients who don't sleep in the same bed as their partner. And I hear now that there's a large percentage of parents who have chapters of life where they sleep together and chapters of life where they don't. And it's just a great example of like, it doesn't have to be black and white. Like your needs can shift and change from day to day and from season to season. And it's not this slippery slope where things keep getting worse and worse. I was frozen in fear of ending my relationship because I was in the mindset of things get worse and worse. So if I make a mistake, that's going to be a step to worse and worse and worse. And I really learned the hard and beautiful way that like challenging things don't lead to worse and worse. Like there is no possibility of that. So
Mm.
it's getting to rock bottom to understand, like, hey, it's not so bad down here. But of course, it's not so bad down here when we allow people in there with us and allow support into our rock bottom and don't feel, the shame, break through those barriers of shame to get support. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to dive into the support that you had when you felt like you were at rock bottom. But before we get there, one thing that you mentioned was not being afraid to make a mess a little bit of your life or of your finances or of your relationship or whatever. Today is just a really potent present thing for me right now. I got my tax return back from my accountant today, and for the very first time ever, because I went from receiving tax refunds in 2020 to in 2021 and 2022 owing money. And this is the first time that I have had enough money set aside to pay my taxes. And it was one of those moments of like, I have more than enough money set aside to pay my taxes. And it was one of those moments of like, yeah, I made a mess of my finances, but I cleaned it up. Like it's okay. I did something new and I made some mistakes and it got a little messy for a while, but it's just numbers on a screen, like I can figure it out and work it out and make a plan to get to where I want to be. And so I really appreciate you bringing that up. And yeah, you mentioned that my parents, when I was the summer after third grade, so I was born in Houston. Summer after third grade, we moved to Austin, and my mom stayed working in Houston. And so Sunday night, she would drive from Austin to Houston about 3.5 hours, be in Houston all the way through Friday afternoon, and then come back to Austin for the weekend. And she did that until 2022, from when I was in third grade, fourth grade until 2022. And I think that has a lot to do with how I view relationships now, because my parents are still in their loving relationship. They're actually now just learning how to live together for all the time now that she's retired. But yeah, I mean, almost my whole life, she had her own apartment in a different city and slept alone. And I have my own apartment and I sleep alone, and like I love it. And yeah, it just goes to show that and I've had friends, really good friends from high school and stuff. They're like, I don't sleep with my husband. Like we have different bedrooms because he snores or whatever, like I like to dream and I don't dream when he's next to me or whatever it is. And yeah, just the realization and the remembrance that a modern family or a modern human isn't in this, like, what was it, the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s? I don't know what decade it was where we projected that like the nuclear family with the white picket fence was the goal, right? And that we're separate from our extended family, right? There is no village taking care of these babies. It's just mom and dad. And we've now seen how poorly that works for us as humans. Like, it just is not how we are built. And so accepting that things can look in a way that we've never seen modeled for us, and to let ourselves be guided by our bodies, by our intuitions, by our desires, and trusting that over what the media portrays as perfection. Yeah.
And to get that kind of creative thinking going on, what do we need? We need to be regulated. And so it's no wonder that we stay in these patterns and in unhealthy relationships when we are dysregulated by them. I mean, just the fog, the mental brain fog that can arise from being under constant stress, even if the stress is, if the stress of parenting, the stress of a relationship that just isn't in alignment, even if both people are wonderful, beautiful people, it can just something cannot be right. And if you're not able to think creatively about what needs to change, that in itself is a sign that something needs to give. So I think a lot of people beat themselves up for not being able to like think of what to do and how to make the decision and how to make a plan to exit a relationship. And that's exactly the thing that they need is someone to co-regulate with, somebody to ground with, somebody to center with. And yeah, you were that person for me. So in terms of support, like I joined a whole bunch of things. I joined something called the Wise Women's Council for entrepreneur CEO parents, and then I reached out to you for coaching, and like you just helped me just move my business forward, but also like held my hand with like little things like blocking the people I needed to block and making choices from within me and like prioritizing my self-care is not the right word, not beautiful and rich enough for what you were. But I'll never forget the moment that you said like I do whatever I can to be a clear channel so that I can be there for you. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I have to make decisions that allow me to be a clear channel. And I've taken that with me over the years when I need to, cancel plans and rest or say no to a really amazing seeming opportunity because something else is more in alignment for me. It's all of these little micro choices that we have to make from within ourselves instead of from a place of wanting to seem a certain way, please a certain someone. Yeah. And having people to model that for us when we can't seem to find it within ourselves is so important. So yeah, I had one therapist that really just helped me with divorce and one therapist that was helping me with more sort of getting through the parenting aspect of things. And then you to help me with my career pivot and with my just healing in general. So very special.
Yeah.
But
So that was,
what was the step that I needed to get all that support? The first step was like deserving it, believing that I deserved to have people in my life to help me. And that's something that so many high achievers have trouble with. It's like, oh, I seem so strong. Nobody thinks I need help. I was hearing it in our our breathwork session yesterday that, someone was saying, like, I never seem like I need help, and everybody's just complimenting me on how strong and brave and resilient I am. And that is such a hard thing to like seem vulnerable and to ask for help. And I really had to do that final step of like leaping to see who's going to come and catch me and trust that people will. And then people did, but no one was willing to push me. No one was willing to push me off the ledge. And I really wanted someone to push me off the ledge. I really wanted someone to say, like, honey, you're in this relationship that is like stealing your soul and making life really hard. Um, and you got to get out. But no one was willing. People respected me so much. They were respecting me to make my own decisions. And that is a beautiful thing. And I always treasure everybody who waited patiently for me to change life at my own pace. And yeah, but I do share this story in hopes that people will leap, leap sooner, as soon as they want to.
Yeah, one thing that really mm, bothers me or like maybe even triggers me in our culture is when we recognize the women who have stayed in their relationship through all the turmoil, all of the struggle, all of the challenges, all of the problems, all the things, and they're still with their partner. And I get that there is merit in that, right? Like sticking it out and you've committed, so staying there. And I feel like it doesn't paint the entire picture. And so it sends a message of you got to stay no matter what, and that's the only way that you're a good woman. And I'm curious if that messaging is something that you've picked up on, I mean, especially like working and seeing media, but yeah, if that's something that you felt internally or externally when you were navigating that.
For sure. I think, yeah, there's so much shame that can arise culturally from leaving, and exactly what you're saying, like being a good woman who stays through the turmoil. And like, I guess there's a difference between like having compassion for someone and like losing yourself completely. Um, it's really hard. I think what ties into what you're saying is like that I'm not going to leave until it feels right. And when we are programmed by culture to stay and work hard on relationships, that feeling of right isn't going to come from within our body unless we are having that high self-worth and that embodiment that comes with making decisions despite what culture has to say, despite what parents, families, partners have to say. And it's so hard to get that right feeling when you're waiting for your partner to help you feel like it's right. Like that's not going to happen. Like sadly, two people are probably going to have different ideas about when a relationship needs to come to an end. And it can be when you are, recovering from codependency or just in the midst of it without even knowing, it can be really hard to disappoint someone and leave. Like that is the exact challenge. It's such a catch 22. Um, so sometimes we have to do things before they quote unquote feel right if our feelings have been swayed by so many external forces.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So how do you work with people? You said that you work with high achievers and recovering perfectionists who are pivoting in their life. And so, how do you do that? How do you help them navigate those big changes that they're making?
Yeah, I take a really multifaceted approach, and the foundation of it all is providing a space that can hold shamelessly whatever they are going through and whatever is coming up, and just building that trust slowly. I mean, We're talking about people who have been in like saving face for a lot of their life, and building that trust is really the foundation of it all. And so one of my programs is a 12-week program. It was called Pivot last season. It's going to be called Wild Pivot this season, to incorporate more of that like embodied um, presence, as well as the sort of strategy aspect of it, like strategizing what needs to happen next in life, really taking that like strategic and spiritual approach and combining it is my unique take on things. So a lot of my clients end up having a writing practice, end up starting a Substack, end up starting a business. They root into self-love, they get centered, they get clear, and then they're like, I want to start a business. Like, and I'm like, wow, the divorce is not even finalized yet. And you're like publishing a book or you're starting a business. It's just like beautiful to see them come into their power and their strength. Wild Pivot goes through a series of themed weeks. So the first week is finding your purpose and rooting into your fearless purpose. And then we go into core values and really building like a vision for your future. It can feel so hard to set goals when you're in complete chaos. But I really find that like building a vision, even if it seems impossible, which it probably does, it's like what happens along the way to that goal. Like it doesn't have to be actually reaching that goal. It's like what happens along the way to reaching that goal. Just like with your taxes, it's like, oh, I made this mess so that I can now face my financial issues. And so I love building that vision and just seeing what happens when you root into something seemingly impossible. And we do that through multiple ways, like visualizations, vision boarding, and all the things. And also really working on setting boundaries and holding people's hand while they set boundaries that might disappoint others, really helping them set a foundation for their lives that is based on their needs in this specific chapter. And yeah, working towards having, healthy coping mechanisms, healthy mindset, and really taking that from like a physical, spiritual, and mental approach, like bottom up healing, listening to the body, and being that loving space for people, being
Hmm.
that co-regulator.
Yeah. I love that. And truly, let us all never underestimate the power of having someone to co-regulate with. And like you said before, when I always forget the things that I mentioned, especially the ones that like really land for people. I love that that stuck with you, how I said that it's my job to be a clear channel. It's my job to just like feel really good so that I can support you in feeling really good. And I mean, even just being in your energy, I feel really good. So, what a blessing to be a client of yours, to be in your energy, to share space with you. Um, Janice, two final questions. One is where can people go to learn more about you and Wild Pivot and how they can work with you?
So you can find me at janisvogel.com, and you can follow along on my Instagram, which is also Janis Vogel. Janis like Janis Joplin, Janisvogel. Yeah, I'm the wild child of a hippie mom from Germany. So she named me Janice on the day I was born.
Love it.
So, yeah.
How fun. And then the last question is, what are three books that you think everyone should read, whether they're related to the topics of today or not, doesn't matter. Whichever books are things that everyone should read.
Yeah. Some books are like they have titles that make you like not want to read them, but you really need to read them. And if I actually did like a healing book club at one point because it can be so hard to read these books alone. One of those books is Codependent No More. It's a book that you'll probably want to throw across the room when you first pick it up, but it's such an important book and will help people set boundaries that they've been uncomfortable to set and carve out that space that they need in order to get into a mindset where they can make decisions. Like people are so hard on themselves about making decisions, but it's like, are you in an environment where you can make a decision? How about we work on getting you into a space where you can actually think? So, overwhelm is that sign to change the environment, not that sign that you are somehow deficient in any way. So, Codependent No More, number one. Untamed, which I mentioned by Glennon Doyle. I read that twice before my divorce, and I really would love there to be a global survey on how many people were inspired to dabble in divorce after reading that book. And I say dabble because it's like divorce has this weight to it, this finality, and it's like, how about we just get curious? Can you imagine like getting curious about divorce? It can be a freeing process. And I really aim to have partners in my life where I can bring up a topic in a conversation without it being at all scary to do so. Like it can be, you can feel nervous in like a healthy way, challenge it, but like truly terrified. If you're truly terrified to have a conversation about divorce, that is a sign that something is up. And book number three, Codependent No More, Untamed. I'm sitting in front of this book, likely. Um, oh, yeah. So, book number three actually is a book that you told me about, which is Existential Kink. And it's all about like finding pleasure in the ways that we fuck up, which I think is so brilliant. And I love to ask my clients the question like, how is this vice, this problem, how is it serving you? How
Hmm.
is it protecting you? So often we're like, we have to, we have to just focus on our positive affirmations and all the things that we want and like envision life and like stop being an overthinker and stop being a perfectionist and stop. But like, so I love the question, like, how do we seek pleasure in that? And I found that I, for example, seek pleasure in overwhelm. Overwhelm is like, oh, great, I can just sit back and do nothing because I am overwhelmed. And so it really helped me examine that word for myself and look at overwhelm as an invitation to find new actions and new resources and new support.
Mm, love it. Yeah, I thought about existential kink earlier on in our conversation with something that you said. And I wonder if it was about making the mess, because I know for me, I made a mess of my finances so that I could get to a place of scarcity, so that I could get out of it and say that I did. Which is
You.
so messed up, but it's also, I mean, that book helped me to reveal that so that I could honor that desire and move on, And yeah, so what a great recommendation. Thank you. And did you, out of curiosity, did you read that book or did you listen to it?
I am reading it.
You are reading it. Okay. Yeah. Because I read it and a friend of mine listened to it. And I think next I need to listen to it because she guides you through a meditation. And for me, even as a meditation instructor, it's really hard for me to like read a meditation and then walk myself through it. But in the book, I think she actually guides you through it. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I would like to listen to it as well. So that's great advice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Janice, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for sharing your message with us. It's been such a pleasure. And I look forward to the next time to get to connect, maybe over our hair.
Yes, so many stories. And thank you so much for supporting me over the years and for having me today.
Absolutely. Thank you.